And welcome back, everyone, to the Small Business Expo 2022. It's been a fantastic day. Again, we've been getting a ton of feedback from folks who are taking real learnings and content that are applicable to their business today. So thank you, everyone, so far has invested in us in a worthwhile way. And now, the last session of the day, it's the digital transformation for SMEs. And we're very excited about this panel moderated by Mickey. In association with, of course, Carry Capital, we'll discuss how to adapt swiftly and quickly to this changing landscape of social and economic ecosystem because we're past this COVID-19 thing. Officially, unofficially, don't know. But the idea is get ready and start implementing your plans now from a digital perspective. The main topics in this discussion session will be about the challenges that you might be facing in the wake of transformation because the economy has changed so much. Business leaders from across Canada will give a brief overview of the current trends, as we mentioned. And in the last 10 years, there's been so many changes. But in the last 2 years specifically, it's changed everything. This panel includes some of the most successful leaders in the field who will be sharing their expertise with our audience. And ladies and gentlemen, first we're going to begin with Tessa Anaya. She's a content analyst at Capterra Canada. Please welcome Tessa. And Eric Huang. He's the founder and CEO of Advanced Analytics and Research Lab. He's a little shy. He'll be here soon. And while we're waiting for Eric, I'd like to also introduce Shanella Tharavayan. She's a senior manager in charge of the small business portfolio at Interact. Welcome, Shanella. And
Hello,
Lissa Ricci. Now, we connected a number of years ago, just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to how to set up your business for success. Of course, she is the head of sales at Small Business Solutions at Cisco. And our moderator, a friend of Canadian SME for a number of years, Mickey Valeramich. He is the Growth and Marketing Executive, Strategic Advisor, CMA Council member, and speaker. Welcome, Mickey. I'll leave it for you guys, and we don't want to forget Faye. My apologies. Faye Pang is a Canadian country manager for Xero. Welcome, Faye. And over to you, Mickey.
All right. Thank you, Shiraz. Thank you very much. Always a lovely introduction from you and a great start to this, what is about to be amazing panel. So first of all, I'm super excited to be here. Always a pleasure. I see some familiar faces that I've spoken to with before. Actually seen some of you just recently at Collision. So hopefully those that were there hopefully enjoyed it. But really great to be here and can't wait to get started. But before I do, perhaps I'm going to do a little bit of intro. I know Shiraz kind of mentioned your names and your roles in your organizations, but I want to kind of get a little bit of context to the listeners or the viewers to know exactly what you do. So, Faye, we're going to start with you. So, Faye is a Canada country manager for Xero. Xero is a global small business platform with more than 3.3 million subscribers worldwide that's dedicated to making business beautiful. Prior to joining Xero, Faye helped launch the Uber Eats app in Toronto in December 2015, scaling the business from 80 restaurants on launch day to 20,000 partners by end of her tenure. So lovely history, lots of small business. So very excited to have you here, Faye. Lissa has over 15 years of experience in sales leadership roles and is currently head of sales for small business solutions at Cisco Canada. There she understands or is really building the understanding that small businesses have different needs. She's excited to be leading the charge to bring new technology portfolio called Cisco Designed to the Canadian marketplace. And this portfolio caters specifically to small businesses and startups. So welcome, Lissa. Tessa is the content analyst at Capterra Canada, where her time is dedicated to method-based investigations to help SMEs of all industries access the insights that can elevate their organizations. Her of-the-moment consumer surveys and market research have earned her features in IT World Canada, Les Affaires, the Financial Post, and the Journal of Montreal. Tessa, welcome. Shanella is the Retail Commerce Senior Manager and in charge of the small business portfolio at Interact. Her responsibilities include merchant acceptance and usage, growth of new products, and interchange pricing controls and process. She's also a co-lead and co-founder of the Women's Employee Resource Group at Interact, helping to inform diversity and inclusion program development. So welcome, Shanella. And Eric. Eric is the founder and CEO of Advanced Analytics and Research Lab, an affordable hybrid analytics service and solution provider, consultancy, and education shop. The company helps organizations to fully streamline and utilize data to increase productivity, improve insights, and ultimately achieve their goals. Eric has worked in various capacities in consulting, business development, finance, and academia, and has experience teaching undergraduate and master level students. So welcome everyone. Really good to be here, and very excited to kick off the conversation. So digital transformation. So I think we're about to kind of delve into this in a little deeper way. But I personally believe that the term and the science around it have been around for a while. And in fact, I think the digital transformation meaning has kind of transformed over the years. So really kicking it off. Maybe we'll just kind of go around the table or the virtual table and just ask, so how do you define digital transformation in 2022? And Tessa, let's start with you.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Mickey. Well, the way I see it, digital transformation is just a big umbrella term that represents any initiative that a company takes on to introduce a new or modernize an existing digital aspect of business. That can look like a lot of things. That could be reconfiguring a business model, tapping into new revenue streams, or optimizing existing processes from something manual to something digital, and maybe even automated. Happy to pass it on to Eric if you'd like to give it a shot.
Sure. Thanks for that. So actually, when I think about digital transformation, I think the word that maybe scares SME a little bit is that transformation piece. Like it's like overnight, everybody's changing everything. So maybe a word that I like to use more is more sort of the digital journey, and also thinking about from a market perspective, digital disruption. So on the digital journey side, transformation doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of incremental things, whether it's kind of like Tessa said, process changes or business model changes and things like that. So there's a lot of different dimensions of digital transformation, which I'm sure we'll touch on. So I'll end it off there and pass it over. I don't know, Lisa, want to say something?
I do want to say something. I just have to get myself off mute first. Thanks for passing the baton, Eric. You guys really summed it up, and I think that that's generally what we're hearing all of the time in terms of what does digital transformation mean. So just taking a manufacturer lens on, it's really about understanding what are the business outcomes that our customers are looking for. And then at Cisco, we're always looking at, okay, what are the technologies that are going to best serve those businesses to achieve those outcomes? And then obviously, what is the price point that they need to make it palatable for them? So that's the lens that we're always looking at from a digital transformation perspective, right? When we're thinking about how can we be effective and helpful to small businesses to quickly achieve the business outcomes so that they can remain successful in the economy. Shanella.
Thanks, Lisa. So I'm going to take it from a payments perspective. So plain and simply put, digital transformation from the payment side simply means alternative to cash, right? Cash is no longer king. It's a court gesture at the moment. So you have to kind of move on to something newer and better. So it's how are you going to meet your customers' needs? And it's nothing fancy. Digital transformation is a very scary term, I think, for small businesses. So it's never think of it as something insane, something that costs a lot of money. It's plain and simply find an alternative to the old way of thinking that is modernized in that makes sense in the modern world, right? That in the current world. And for payments, it's simply, how do you not just take cash? Like, is it a terminal? Is it e-commerce? Whatever it is, it's just that alternative. And that's what it means from a payments perspective. With that, I'll pass it on to Faye.
Chanel, I love cash as a court gesture. I'm definitely going to use that one. Maybe just to pick up on what the other panelists have said, right? I think Eric said it really well. Digital journey here at Xero, working with 3 million plus small businesses around the world. We think of this notion of digital maturity, right? And it can be customer facing things like how you communicate with your customers, the digital marketing, e-commerce. It could be back office tools. That's what we see a lot of our partners thinking and working towards as they think about their digital maturity, right? Things like business management, productivity, digital production, the things you use for data analytics and reporting and insights, right? So ultimately, at the end of the day, it can be a really scary word, as a lot of the other panelists have said, but it is about driving efficiency into the way you're doing things and leveraging the best of modern technology to make your workflow and your customers' experience that much more beautiful. So pretty simply put.
Wonderful. Thank you, Faye. Well, it's a couple of things I've observed as everybody has shared. Well, first of all, what I've observed is my job is going to be super easy because I didn't have to do anything. You guys sort of kicked off a conversation, which is great. And secondly, it's a really interesting, and that's what I love about this particular panel. There's a very interesting blend of different industries and different business models, and I think how that kind of goes into the whole thing about changing that mindset of digitization. But Eric, if I may kind of go back to something you said, and I think that's really interesting, and probably one of the scary things for a lot of small businesses is that they believe transformation has to be a complete change, right, on-off switch. But you said something about it's a kind of a journey in bits and pieces, and I think, Faye, you touched on it too. So may I just sort of ask, like, how do you envision that when you think about a journey? Are you talking about a blend of old and new? Is there almost a step approach of how you sort of generate that shift to digitization? So just a little bit on that, Eric, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, generally it's a incremental change, and I really want to focus on like incremental and continuous improvement. Like you could hire a new team that does digital, whether it's like technology team or analytics team, or you could buy a new software like all the different ones that we have on the call here. But really to think about like on the data side, like we think about it like a data journey, right? Like there's all these different maturity on the data side, from like you have data or you have database and you go into reporting, BI, advanced analytics, AI, things like that. So there's multiple steps, and people often think about the very end, which is like, oh, everybody's talking about AI and we all want to get there, but there's a lot of steps in between. And the foundation of that has always been data and processes. Like you have to have that before you move on to the next stage. And sort of breaking down the dimension, and we already talked about this, is like, do you break it down by functions, right? Accounting can have digital transformation, marketing can have digital transformation. Or you can think about your overall business model, like, hey, do we go from Blockbuster renting out DVDs all the way to Netflix on, digital online content and things like that?
Okay, no, that's great, and I think it's an important point, and we'll get to it later on in the panel in terms of larger discussion. But I wanted to sort of preface it. But I really like that idea of it's a journey. So when we talk about like, who cares? Like, why should we digitize? Like, why bother with this, transformation? So maybe as we get into the conversation, maybe it's, in your opinion, what are some of the key forces, whether internal or external, that are driving the need for small businesses to adopt digitization? And Lisa, if we can maybe start with you on this one.
Absolutely, Mickey. Thanks so much for the question. I mean, I think that one thing that we've been hearing for years now, but I'd be remiss to say, is that the pandemic absolutely exacerbated digital transformation for small businesses, right? And it was kind of already this digital divide that existed upon small businesses before the pandemic and COVID-19 hit. So then all of a sudden you have this, you have this hit, and everybody has to pivot, right? So Cisco actually did a study, I recall, in 2020 at the peak of the pandemic. And in that study, 70% of small businesses surveyed confirmed that they have absolutely accelerated their digitalization efforts as a result of COVID-19. So coming out of that now, because I think we're kind of all tired of having everything tied to COVID-19 and the pandemic, I think now this is just our new normal, right? And we're looking forward as businesses. And again, kind of back to what we were saying before on, what are the goals of my business and how do I achieve those and how do I do it super efficiently and super effectively? And typically that means you got to digitize it, right? So I would say that the reality of businesses now is that there's absolutely a demand for new customer experiences. This is driving the change. a demand for innovative business models, and a demand to empower your workforce innovation. So these, being such top priorities, essentially it's, if you aren't thinking as a smart organization today, your competition is, right? And we truly just live in a digital world, in, personal and in business.
That's great. So it sounds like it's really a lot of it comes from the fact that the small businesses have to meet their consumers where they are versus pull them where they need to be, right? I mean, things are certainly changing. Consumer behavior is pushing a lot of this. And by the way, I'm just writing all this great stuff. Don't think that I'm playing video games down here. So
yours, Nikki. It's all yours. You can have it. You can have it.
It's all great stuff. It's all gold. But I think also when I think about the innovation and sort of the changes in these business models, I think that again is something that you're touching on that we'll get to a little bit later on. But Faye, I would love your perspective. I mean, I think you guys obviously deal with so many small businesses, in particular when it comes to really starting to journey into a very, very digital forefront of exactly what the core of your product is. Perhaps what is sort of your view on what is driving this demand and this change?
Yeah, I completely agree with Lissa, right? Whether it was the pandemic, global political conflicts, or even a ridiculously large ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal, I think there's been a whole bunch of black swan events, once in a lifetime things that have happened that have made, everyone, small businesses included, have to pivot in an instant and adapt more quickly than they ever thought they would have had to do in the past. And so many SMEs in our experience are realizing that these are not just issues for global companies, but they actually apply to local and Main Street businesses as well. As an example, Xero ran a survey last year with 1,200 small business owners in Canada. We found that 2/3 of them, 67%, agreed the pandemic showed them the value of remaining flexible and adaptable in these times. And 73% stressed the importance of mastering digital technology, right? So it's never been more prescient and more top of mind. In addition to some of the factors that Lissa mentioned, one of the things that we're really seeing is this ever-present search for efficiency, right? In a world where nearly everyone is facing a talent shortage, companies are being challenged to do more with less, and this is universal. So natural place to turn in that instance is tools and technology platforms that can allow them to scale their business without linearly scaling their team. So what we've seen in short is that Canada's small businesses can't afford to kick it old school, as we say, and use spreadsheets and receipts and shoeboxes anymore. Over the last 2 years, what we've really seen is this acknowledgement that digital transformation or adoption project that's been on the back burner can wait no longer, and now's the time to pick that up.
That's great. So it really is a blend of kind of external and internal forces of changing consumer behavior plus efficiencies internally to run a business in a better way.
Absolutely.
That's great. So obviously those are some of the reasons that, clearly pointing to a need to embrace digitization. So obviously I don't think anybody listening to this and viewing this is going to say, no, this is not for me as a small business, but those that are sitting there thinking about how do I do it? Like, where do I start? So perhaps maybe I'd love to hear more from you on how do they actually begin the journey of digital transformation. And Eric, you're a small business owner yourself, perhaps maybe a viewpoint from your perspective on how to do this efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting because I look at it both from I run a small business, but I also, as part of my job, I help other organizations, whether if it's small business from a one-person entrepreneur all the way to multinational. So I kind of see the digital transformation on a pretty broad scale and across industries. So if I have to be fairly give advice that sort of applies to more SMEs, number one is sort of to have the inspiration and have the proactivity and not just reacting to crisis, right? Like there's two camps of people, right? There's people who are doing digital transformation because, COVID pushed us to do it. And there are people who, things are going well, but they're always looking to drive more efficiencies, drive more profitability, do things better, and future-proofing their business. So I think first off, it really has to come from the top where the executive management level has to say, okay, this is something we want to do, so that it trickles down to the rest of the organization to have that mindset. and then building a strategy around that. So in terms of building a strategy, I sort of look at the gaps both from a top-down perspective, so understanding the overall strategy of organization, where do we want to go, and then bottom up, taking an inventory of what technology you do have, taking an inventory of what kind of processes you have, and figure out where are the gaps, and then from there create sort of a 3 to 5 year roadmap and say, okay, here are our gaps, here's our low-hanging fruits, here's what we should do in terms of let's call it innovation projects or technology procurement.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you, Eric. Shanella, what about from the perspective of sort of what you see in your organization?
So I think the most important thing that small businesses need to remember is that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to, right? Start with what makes the most sense for your customers at the moment, and then make sure that you are not going to lose the customers you have. I'm going to use the example. So Faye launched Uber in Canada. Uber launched with Apple Pay, I believe, in Canada, and then onto Google Pay. Imagine yourself ordering an Uber and then having to find your credit card or debit card and then type that information in, right? Especially Uber Eats. Imagine yourself sitting on a couch and then having to get up and go and do that. It's not going to happen. It was the speed of which that wallet payment, that is what led to the success of these apps, of these ordering apps, right? It was simply, we don't have to think about it. We don't have to get up. We're being lazy. And pandemic obviously made laziness even worse. But this is what small businesses have to remember, is that make sure that you're doing everything possible to make your customer not think about the payment, right? And this applies to other areas of digitization too. Make sure your customer is not thinking. Remember that they want speed, they want efficiency, and so meet them there, right? If they want curbside pickup, then make sure that your phone has an app through one of your acquirers that will take payments. Make it easy. Make whatever you're doing, make it easy, right? And that's the big thing for small businesses to remember. Take that friction out. Frictionless, buzzword of the day, buzzword of the year, make it frictionless. As soon as you add a little bit of thought to it, as soon as that person has to be like, oh, well, if I order online, am I going to be able to return it in the store? No, maybe I won't. Maybe those pants won't fit. Maybe that, the crock pot I ordered won't be good. I don't know why I came up with crock pot, but that's, I don't cook a day in my life, but that's what I came up with. But these are the things that you need to think about. Put yourself in the space of your customer. It's easy for me to say because I'm in payments and I'm obviously a regular customer, but I think it applies to the other businesses too. Like if you put yourself in the space of your customer, would you be annoyed or would you be upset with the way that they're doing things? If that's the case, immediately fix that. Okay,
interesting, and yeah, for sure. And I think even as I think about as they build these experiences for the consumers, for sure, it is all about removing the friction. I think I used to always use this term to say remove the hassle so they can hustle. I mean, that's the kind of idea of just make it easy for me. But a lot of times, I think what we see with a lot of small businesses is they just simply are just not sure what to do. And in fact, not knowing where to start was a major challenge that we saw at Cargo when we were speaking to small businesses about digital transformation. And some of you might have already even maybe seen this already, but the State of SME study in 2021, we revealed 4 essentially areas that when we asked the SMEs about what stops you from adopting digital transformation, first foremost was, I have no idea where to start. Number 2 was cost. Number 3 was the learning curve. And then number 4 was cybersecurity. Just this fear about, I'm going to lose everything if I just put it into the digital channels. So those are some of the things that we saw in 2021. But perhaps maybe what are some of the challenges that you've seen with essentially implementation of digital transformation in small businesses? And Tessa, I would love to hear from you on this particular one.
Absolutely. Yeah, Mickey, you just touched on a few of the biggest challenges for SMEs wanting to implement new digital process. For me, I mean, on my side, we see three main ones when the implementation comes to the topic, and cybersecurity is definitely on people's minds because as companies make more and more processes digital, A lot of them are using more cloud technologies to store digital data, to provide remote access, and to enable hybrid work models, which I think we're all fans of nowadays. And that's great. But, as we implement more and more digital processes, the body of hackable data becomes larger and larger, and the risk of a data breach increases. So, to protect against the costs and disruptions that are incurred by these data breaches, SMEs have to invest in some resources like cybersecurity software, such as like network defense or data encryption, so that people can't reach that data that is so valuable. And a couple of takeaway tips for this would be to make sure you secure, your employees' devices, establish encryption protocols, to use multi-factor authentication to make sure only the people that you want in your data are in your data, and also to have more granular access control over the data. So yeah, again, granting only specific access to specific people. And cybersecurity doesn't always have to be such a scary, impossible, I need an IT guide just for this to invest in this. There are definitely affordable solutions and a lot of stuff available. Another challenge that we see, the second thing I'm going to talk about, is the actual implementation. How do we install this digital process? How do we incorporate that? And a huge challenge here is integrating it into the digital processes that you already have. Because with every new digital workflow, you've got to ensure that it works with what you've already got. So, sometimes like a legacy system that you've been using for years might not be compatible with the newest, payment processing technology. It might not compute, and that can, cause other disruptions. And that's not the point of digital transformation. We want to go faster and we want to be more efficient. So we've got to make sure our digital processes are communicating. So yeah, we've got to make sure when we're integrating data, we have to construct a technology roadmap or an IT roadmap, which outline projects of implementation and make sure that the integration and other implementation tasks are planned and assigned to stakeholders. And you don't have to be an IT department or a professional to do this either. There's plenty of resources out there. A simple internet search can, or even going to the Capterra blog, you can find tons of stuff on how to create a tech roadmap. That's not going to only help you with the integration of your new digital processes, but that's going to help you also be proactive in the future to be able to identify the moment that that's not working, or it's going to give you the roadmap to also use when you're taking into consideration new digital processes that you want to incorporate. And lastly, we've got the human angle, which is the challenge of onboarding employees, which you also touched on, Mickey, because it's not just the technical side that has to be planned. Employees also have to be considered. And it can be a challenge for some people. And if employees can't use the new digital process that you're implementing, then your digital transformation hasn't been successful. We need to be trained. We have to offer support so that we avoid wasted time, wasted money, unprotected data, disruptions to day-to-day processes and stuff like that. And we've seen a huge jump in site traffic to Capterra Canada for learning management systems in the past year. Year over year, we saw a 400% jump in site traffic just to the learning management system, or LMS, which shows that I think companies are using this LMS software to develop and administer their employee training programs to make sure that their employees are in the loop on these new processes, so that time isn't wasted. It can also, and this is a way that you can inform people on the best security practices, compliance laws, company or federal data handling policies. It kind of covers a lot of the challenges and a lot of the worries that SMEs might have.
So we're talking cybersecurity, we're talking successful integration, having a clearly outlined IT roadmap, and of course the people. And I think it always goes back to that triangle of, it's people, it's process, it's technology together. You can't have one really without the other. But absolutely. So Faye, I assume that, what Tessa has said is probably resonates a bit with what you might have seen on your end of things at Xero as well. So maybe just a couple of comments from you.
Yeah, I think she touched on a lot of really great points. And one maybe, which I'll just pick up and carry forward, is this notion of transformation as change management. You know, whether you are a single sole prop out there, or you've got a team of 5 or 10, ultimately any change needs a change management plan. And I think that's a lot of what Tessa was alluding to. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, but I think about that a lot, right? Because, you know, basically, I'm going to try to draw it backwards, but there's this technology trigger. I want to use or implement a CRM program. There's this peak of inflated expectations. It's going to change the world. It's going to drive my business 5x. There's this trough of disappointment. It's really hard. There's a lot of change, and it's really different from what we've been doing before. And then there's a slope of enlightenment as you approach the plateau of productivity, which is it actually starts to work and it actually starts to fire. It's a pretty predictable cycle, and one that I think about a lot as it relates to firms adopting Zero or small businesses using any technology. You've got to know and understand that you're going to go through that cycle in some shape or form, but be really clear on the why you're doing the transformation and really keep that North Star through that cycle and think about how you bring your team along with you, right? So when I think about what's holding small businesses back, it really is sort of the grit and perseverance of going through that and being really clear-minded about the promised land and what you're trying to get to, because it's not easy. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it, right? But it's important, and it's, I would suggest in a lot of cases, existential for small businesses to digitize their operations. And so we've got to just understand how that happens and what you need to do to make it happen successfully within your organization. We see in the data all the time at Zero, SMEs are lagging versus enterprise or larger businesses around digitization. That's limited access to resources. And you talked about, Mickey, skills, employee skill sets within the organization, knowledge and feeling confident around it. And to that, we always say, there are experts out there. We're firm believers in that. You don't have to do everything. It's in a small business owner's DNA to just roll up their sleeves and do it. But recognize when you have that gap. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and then be really clear-minded about the process that you're going to need to take to get there.
For sure. And I really like the idea of that, digital transformation is really truly part of culture, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's really thinking about how do we transition from a culture A to culture B. So it's not just a bunch of tools, but really how that sort of, how we make that shift. And I do think sometimes, and I always urge organizations to do this, look to your organization, because there might be that one person or more than one person or maybe a department that's already doing it. They're already driving that need to digitize, and they can be your perfectly great sort of forefront of carrying your message and helping you and helping your executive team, sort of to get out there because of, the challenges that they might face. So it seems like that obviously technological advancements have historically accelerated digitization. We talked about it earlier about how things are really starting to change in terms of the outside forces, and the organizations have to really digitize. And it's simply because the two ecosystems really have to align. But that was sort of then. But what about now? What about the future? So when we think about what are some of the future technologies that will drive digital transformation even further. And Shanella, perhaps from a payments perspective, I would love to hear some ideas here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because there's a couple of things that Faye and Tessa said that resonated with me, and it actually applies to the future technology, right? Which is, first, you have to think about whether or not your employees are able to adopt whatever you push forward. And then second of all, the digital transformation doesn't necessarily have to be that like big, scary boogeyman. So first, when you're looking at, from a payments perspective, what the future holds, you don't have to worry about open banking and RTR and all that stuff. Because I know these are scary words that are coming, and all the small businesses are sitting there thinking, well, what does this mean for me? Right? It's interesting because we've done, I think every single organization during the pandemic did a survey. That was just I think the people who benefited the most from the pandemic were all the survey companies, because we all went out and did one. And even for us, it just reinforced what we already knew, right? It's that frictionless concept, is that if I do this in one space, I want to do it in another. So over 70% of those who were surveyed basically said, if I pay with debit in store, I want to pay with it online. So what that means for the future is as you're moving into thinking about what your payments means are going to be in the future, you need to ensure that you're working with your customer, right? So as customers want to pay with debit more or whatever source more, make sure that's available, right? And then in terms of the employees, always think of how your employees are able to learn and able to push products forward. So Tessa was saying, like, if your employees don't understand it, digitization doesn't really make sense. So I'm going to use the example. For years, the Salvation Army and the Royal Canadian Legion did their Christmas, like essentially it was the November, December campaigns, right? We've all donated into the Salvation Army kettle. We've all bought a poppy, right? It's the Canadian thing to do. We all did it. And then as years went on, we all felt guilty because we passed those lovely people and we're like, oh shoot, I don't have money in my pocket. What am I going to do? And either you ran into a store and got cash back because God forbid you find an ATM somewhere, or you walked away with your head down because you're like, oh no, this is happening. And these two organizations that were so heavily reliant on these two campaigns really saw pain, right? So what did the acquiring community do? They came up, well, actually it was a company called TipTap actually came up with a really good solution, which is simply a very quick tap to pay, right? Single dollar amount tap to pay. Salvation Army suddenly was seeing $5, $10, $20 donations that they were missing for years. And then all of a sudden their local charity money went up. Plain and simply put, all of the acquiring partners out there have a solution that is going to work for small businesses in the next few years, right? Whether it's taking payments on your phone, whether it's an old school terminal, whatever it is, whether it's getting their cookie cutter websites up for you so you can take payments, all of it is available. So if you're starting that future proofing of your business, utilize what's available to you, utilize the experts in the market. So go to your acquirers to get your payments, and then go to your bank because the banks will offer you things like e-transfer for business, which will help you pay your vendors faster. So from a payments perspective, that's what I always give advice to retailers to do is simply go and talk to your banks, right? Or go and talk to your acquirers because these are the experts on it, and shop around. People will give you all these answers. And then also talk to your counterparts, other businesses who've been doing this. So, like most small businesses, usually, like they if they've lasted more than 2 years, they're going to last a little bit longer, right? It's in the retail space, and they're going to grow. So speak to your counterparts. Use sessions like these to ask each other questions, and then those people will show you what the future is going to be.
Interesting. And I think that as you were saying this, so one of the stories that I have, it's a good example of this. So I was just recently in Europe visiting a very traditional German restaurant in a German city that used to their receipts were handwritten on a piece of paper. I mean, it wasn't even a receipt in a cash register. So forget about using a credit card. You put out a credit card, they're like, get out of the store. And so I visited this place after many years and saw the owner, had a great chat. Of course, the food was fantastic. And of course, the bill came in the same exact way in a piece of paper. And I gave him cash. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, we don't take cash. I said, well, what do you mean you don't take cash? You don't take anything else. What do you want me to do? Wash dishes. And his point was, he said, I said, well, so I asked him about this transition to cashless payment. And he said, well, the reality is that I wasn't really given a choice. And I said, well, tell me more. And he said, well, the bank that I deal with helped me understand that this is how people want to pay. It's not about me saying, well, this is the only thing I'm going to do, and I don't really understand technology. He said your consumers have technology that you're going to have to match yours to. So in other words, that's just the way the future is going to be. So they kind of used, gave him a push to do that. And he said, it's easy now. I don't have to worry about cash. I don't have to worry about. So it kind of shows just even how a very traditional small business, right, in Bavaria, in Germany, has now transitioned to something so different.
Yeah, and what's interesting with that is, it's not just the banks, and it's not just so what people have to remember is that as you're moving forward with this, right, you don't have to do it quickly. Do it slowly, right? The bank may have pushed you towards it. And the people may have pushed you towards it, but it doesn't mean that you have to go from A to Z on day one. You can go from A to B, which is simply, okay, I'm going to cashless payments. Great. So take one form of payment, like, one, and then move to the next form of payment, move to e-commerce, move to taking mobile payments, whatever it is, just do it in a way that makes sense. And then make sure you're doing it in a way that's not going to result in you having to close your doors for the day to do it, right? Like, these businesses have been through enough shutdowns. Just do it in that gradual manner.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So great payment example. But Tessa, maybe, I mean, you kind of look across many different industries. Sort of from your perspective, so what are you seeing in terms of future technologies that are going to keep driving this digital transformation?
Yeah, as a representative of a software recommendation site, I bet you're all expecting me to say like blockchain or artificial intelligence or wearable devices. Yep. Right. But no, actually, the answer is that digital transformation seems to be finding its way into niches. It seems to be going down instead of into these bigger, more abstract concepts. Over the last year, our catalog on Capterra Canada has experienced increased traffic in mostly niche-specific software categories. For example, comparing the first 5 months of 2022 to the same one in 2021, we saw that most of the categories that experienced the biggest jumps were B2B2C oriented. So salon software, consignment shop software, assisted living software, auto body shop tools, even childcare software. And so it seems like industries of all kinds are finding new digital solutions to streamline their operations, which is really cool. At this rate, SMEs could even be seeing bespoke software solutions for every part of their business that's specific to their niche, which is great to see more and more small businesses fall into the umbrella of digital transformation. As far as the more general digitalization trends, they're also making their way into day-to-day business processes that are kind of almost, industry agnostic. So, customer loyalty programs, staff scheduling, employee recognition, helping organizations upgrade these tasks that were traditionally performed manually. And, we've also seen large upticks in software categories like onboarding, scheduling, point of sale, accounting, human resource software. It seems like the digitalization trends are really just seeping into like every vein of the organization's body, and helping them to become more digitally agile, which is great to see.
That's great. And so obviously, it sounds like it's really across the board. Really, there really isn't one specific area of the business. So clearly, there is this tremendous need to digitize. So I guess as a small business owners, it's really not about if, but really when do I do this? When does my business need to get on the journey? So in your opinions, what would you say are the 3 key success factors for small businesses embracing digital transformation? So how can they do this sort of without disruption? And Lisa, I would love to start with you and your perspectives from Cisco.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this conversation is the conversation that we're having at Cisco all the time. Tessa has done a really good job of articulating kind of what hinders a small business from moving forward and having the confidence in going into their digital journey. So just before I answer that question, Mickey, I really do want to stress that if you need help on figuring out how do I approach this, that's what we're here for, right? You can reach out to a company like Cisco who has the technology. We can help you on your journey. We highly recommend to find a technology partner that you trust in your area that will help you on your journey, right? That will help you with all of the technology and the vision that you have in your 2 to 5 to 10-year plans. And when you partner with somebody, that's a free value add that they're going to offer you. So that's how you get started, right? So if anyone needs help with that, you can find me on LinkedIn. And I saw a note in the chat about grants. We have a very unique relationship with the grants office. And so if any small business is looking to figure out what exact grants that they apply for, they can qualify for, once again, you can find me. I can help you with that. So we'll help you afford it. We'll help you figure out how to procure it. And we'll help you make sure that you have the right technologies for, where your business is at today. And then, make a game plan and the roadmap, like Tessa said, moving forward. To answer your question on the top 3 factors that we're seeing, Mickey, I would say, we need to, first and foremost, prioritize your deployment. So once, like Chanela said, you make that decision, like I'm going to go digital. I'm going to go from A to B, right? Once you decide I'm going from A to B, commit would be what I say. Don't stop and don't start and stop. Once you're there, you gotta keep going forward. So step 1, prioritize the critical business processes that you want to automate. Right? You might want to do an overhaul of your whole organization. It might be 1 or 2. I don't know, but make a list of prioritization that you are looking to automate. Second, evaluate the right technologies to invest in. Right? Which is where somebody like me and partners can come in to help you with that. We have the expertise, right? And you really, when you're thinking about your technologies to focus on empowering a remote workforce. That's not going away. That was also heightened, back in 2019, but we know it's here to stay. A secure e-commerce platform, which Tessa and Faye have really been speaking about, and then tie that in with a robust cybersecurity network. So don't be afraid if you move to cloud that you're going to lose everything to ransom attacks and whatnot. Make it part of your plan and in your journey. Embed it, and it is not as expensive as you might think. We have very cost-effective solutions that we can tie this all up in a beautiful bow for you, so that it's easy. It's easy implementation, easy on the user, and you can sleep well at night knowing that your business is secure in the right way. So don't be afraid of it. Just plan for it, and then don't deviate from the plan.
Love it. Thank you so much, Lisa. Chanela, would you disagree with any of the points that Lisa brought up?
I wouldn't dare. No, she's exactly right. Like, don't deviate, plan for it. Might be the thing I'm going to write on a Post-it and put on my wall. Absolutely. So listen, the future is a very scary word, right? Like, planning for the future for small businesses who are most likely exhausted, trying to get through this day, trying to develop, just get through the present day is a very scary thing. The future, it's a very cliche thing to say, but the future is now, right? It's for a small business, the future is from here to the next 5 years, right? Like, how are you going to get to there? And plan for each of those 5 years. So, as an example, one of the big things that's coming down in payments in the next year is the MPOC standard, or Mobile Payments on COT standard, from PCI. What this is going to do is it's essentially basically a game changer for the small business solutions to take payments. It's going to allow payments on your phone without any external hardware, as well as with hardware, but it's going to make the solution a lot faster and cheaper to market, right? So for those of you who are using Square right now with the dongle, it could be you can keep using it, or you can find a solution that doesn't have the dongle in it. So it's going to allow small businesses to move. These are things that are already happening. So future is, as I said, it's now, right? So what makes the most financial sense for you? That's the big thing, is don't break the bank to get there, right? So that's why you talk to people like Lisa and Tessa and Faye and Eric, because these guys will get you to the point where they will figure out what makes the most financial sense for you. Interact, we're a payment network, right? So we offer solutions we offer a payment option that pushes out through the banks and through the acquirers. But the rest of my amazing panel that's sitting here will teach you how to get to that next spot in a very quick, and I don't want to say cheap, I want to say in the most financially efficient way.
Perfect. And I've heard the word cost, price, what I often talk about value. But so one of the things that, going back to our study that we did in 2021, as I mentioned, one of the 4 components of the fear of or this stopping of digitization was cost. I think it's going to be too pricey. And obviously, as we're living in this world of insane inflation rates and everything is skyrocketing, so there's probably a tremendous amount of sensitivity to, can I afford it? How expensive is this going to be for me? I mean, 33% in 2021 said that. So I'm pretty sure that it probably only goes up from this point. So do you feel that many of the strategies that we talk about for digital transformation are unmanageable for smaller businesses with limited budgets and technology knowledge? And Eric, we haven't heard from you in a while, so I would love your perspective on that.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, this is what we specialize in. I don't know if you can see on the poster.
Oh,
It says affordable on there because we deal with a lot of SMEs. And actually, I started a company, wanted to do sort of digital transformation, data analytics for nonprofits. So if you think small business have it hard, nonprofits really have it hard. So first off, I wanted to say the budget and Mickey, you said part of the challenge is the people and the talent. That really goes hand in hand. And the technology talent is nowadays very, very expensive, top of the list probably in terms of investment for a lot of organizations. But the funny thing is the technology, like the actual software and things like that, has been around for long enough, decades at this point, that a lot of things that's very fundamental for business to acquire are very affordable, like the technology itself. You think about SaaS software, $10 a month, whatever, things like that. And there's actually a lot of stuff that's even open source and free. So really the cost part is more, how do you acquire that piece of technology that makes sense for you and your team, both from a short-term and long-term perspective? And what does that investment look like? Are you able to use open source software? Can you create something on your own? And obviously, a lot of owners think about this. Do you buy, do you build, do you hire kind of situation? And like Lisa said, partnering with a technology partner in industry verticals or functional verticals, I think is really important. But all that to say, from a cost perspective, people think that that's the holdup. It's really not the cost, because there are a lot of ways to get around the cost. People who are smart, people who are talented are able to get around it, whether it's through like automating processes using code, or even as simple as leveraging like cloud software like Google or OneDrive and things like that. So lots of different applications on that side. And I almost want to say like there's two sides to it. One is there's technology innovation that's very incremental, and there's this like idea of like mundanity in excellence. You have to improve everything 1% each day, or all of your process 5% each time. But overall, that really elevate and catapults you to number one, number two within your competition group. But there are also technology that's like very fundamentally disruptive and almost changes your entire business economics and your business model. So you have to look at those two in a very separate ways, and you can apply like the same success and challenge metrics between those two. So just my 2 cents there.
Okay, well that's great. Tessa, what's your sort of take on this feeling of unmanageable for smaller businesses when we talk about digitization?
Yeah, I know a lot of SMEs get scared off by the cost of software because you just see the price tag on the product, right? There's no price tag next to it showing you how much your business stands to earn, or how much payback you're going to see from this. So, yeah, it's unfortunate that it scares some owners away from using it, but there's definitely a way to find the right software for your business. And no, that doesn't mean the cheapest. As Eric said, there's a lot of solutions that are free, that are open source. And that's one thing that you got to consider, is that's the price of just buying the software once. There's also tons of software with free trials that you can touch on. And I'm about to spit out a bunch of tips. So if you get lost, we have a downloadable asset for finding the right software for you in our virtual booth, if I make a whole spiel here. But yeah, so the pricing, you've got to consider just of the software. You have to also consider the implementation process. Is that going to be something that's going to take up all of your employees' time, or are you going to have to hire an outsider to do that? Because it is vital to set up a plan and calculate the cost of implementation as well. Then you have to think about, the investment in the right training for your team. So, you can, if it's a very comprehensive software solution that you're going to put all of your projects into there, and your employees are going to come to rely on that, you might want to invest a little bit more in the training if that's the case, because your company's going to, rely on that working and that being able to be carried out. If it's a more if it's a more simple software solution, maybe you can go for a less costly training option, like, an e-learning course or a webinar session. And a few extra parting tips would be to try and negotiate the cost of software, because, sometimes there is wiggle room with vendors. Also, it's really important to separate your feature needs and focus, or your feature wants and your feature needs. What do you actually need the software to do for you? Would it be nice if it did some other stuff on top? Yes, but what do you really need it to do? And that's one way you can kind of pare down your budget. And then, again, as Eric said, it's always great to research the free and open source systems to keep your digital transformation within your budget.
Right. And it's great because from what we've seen over the years, the small business owners, so for them, it's not about the price, it's about the value. What do they get for that? So they're willing to pay. They're not willing to pay, but if there's no perceived value for them, then all of a sudden it becomes, this is really not worth it. Faye, I would love your perspective as head of a software business on this panel. So what are some of the things that maybe your teams are seeing with small businesses when it comes to the question about, this is too costly, it's too expensive, and maybe not seeing that value behind what your product really offers?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting questions that we normally pose is, how do you value your time? Right? We've talked a lot about small businesses searching for efficiency in the new world the new normal that we're living in. And oftentimes when you actually sit down with a small business or a partner and say, well, how are you valuing your time? And what is 20% efficiency or 30% efficiency by leveraging tools actually get you back? The math starts to make a ton of sense. You talked about value, right? Once you put that value on your own time or your team's time, it quickly becomes a positive ROI conversation. And so we typically start there, right? How do you value your time? What could efficiency drive for you? And then what are you going to do with that extra time? Are you going to serve your customers better? Are you going to go get net new customers? What does that mean for the growth trajectory and overall success of your business longer term? So yeah, typically those are the conversations we're hearing these days.
That's great. And it's exactly that. To a small business owner, their day is dissected in 250 different ways of the things they have to worry about. So allowing them additional time to focus on things that they need to do, or perhaps even just focusing on their families and things they like to do outside of their business is really, truly valuable. So that's great. Thank you for that, Faye. So, I mean, I guess when I look back to sort of where we started, almost an hour ago, I guess it's been a long chat. Digital transformation is really all about business model sustainability. It's really all about serving the customers in the right way, meet them where they are, not pulling them where you want them to be as a business. So really is kind of, ability to create platforms that will drive business optimization and really future-proof the business. So maybe as a closing thought, as a closing sort of question, perhaps maybe, we can go around the table again and talk about what would be your key advice to small business owners looking to future-proof their business. So over and above perhaps what we talked about, but just in general, what are some of the things that they may want to think about to future-proof their business and build a sustainable model? So Faye, maybe I'll start with you again.
Yeah, I think what we've talked about at length through this panel, there's been such great insights from the other panelists, is the imperative is pretty clear, right? In the data and what we've seen over the last couple of years, the imperative for change is pretty clear. I think my advice, at the risk of sounding glib, is don't wait, right? Like it's so evident the efficiencies that can be gained, the business upside, the revenue opportunity, the better customer experience that could be had by adopting that technology and going on that journey, taking your business into a more digitally mature area. And so, again, at the risk of sounding glib, I'd say, don't wait, but also don't feel like you need to do it all yourself. It's not this big, hairy, scary thing. There are people that are experts in this space. There's lots of resources, as you've heard throughout the last hour. And so leverage those, know that it is going to be a journey, but the time to act is now.
Perfect. Thank you, Faye. Lisa, how about your perspectives?
So I actually, I'm copying my husband's homework on this one, Mickey. So my husband's a small business owner.
Okay,
And instead
love
of
it.
putting on my Cisco lens and my Cisco hat, I posed the question, to my husband first. And his exact answer was apply technology to automate and optimize every aspect of your business that you possibly can, which is music to my ears, but out of his mouth. And so, that was his advice from, being a successful entrepreneur in Canada. So, for example, if you are a hairdresser, look to implement the best booking system. Make it as easy as possible for someone to find you online and book their hair appointment with you. And then obviously Chanela will help them pay very easily as well. Right. If you're not that type of an organization and you have sales teams, digitize your sales teams. So what we mean by that is invest in a stack of technology, right? Your CRM, your marketing tools, your call center software. That's investing in your people. That's investing in your workforce. Set them up for success, and have them an outstanding digital experience that ties back into retention, employee retention, because we know that that's also high right now, and they need an amazing experience at work with tools that they can use and understand and be effective with and productive with, or else they're looking somewhere else, right? So then to just kind of wrap it up in a really simple bow, it would be just make it as easy as possible for your customer to find you, procure your product, or book your service from any device, particularly mobile devices.
Perfect. I love it. And out of curiosity, I would love to know, what sort of business does your husband run?
Software companies. He's got a couple software companies. I'll tell you all about it offline, Mickey.
Okay, that's great. Wonderful.
Yeah, I know what the entrepreneurs and business owners go through. It's a lot, and it is absolutely admirable and outstanding. And I think that's where my passion of small business and making sure that I'm doing right and justice to the small business community comes from. So there you have it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you. Chanela, how about your thoughts on this one?
My husband's great too, but he's not a small business owner. Plain and simply put, I think what a lot of small businesses have to remember is that there was a lot of sympathy that came to them as a result of the pandemic, right? So everyone rallied around small businesses. Oh my God, we got to shop local. We got to make sure they're okay. This sympathy is fading, right? It's going away. So you have to make sure that you keep up with your customer. So meet the customer's want, not the customer's need, right? Because they might need something and then they might be willing to have that little bit of friction, but then they might not come back to you later. So make sure that you're meeting what they want so that they remember you and then come back to you later, right? Lisa said mobile, absolutely, right? So go back to the same thing. Phase Uber would not have succeeded without Apple Pay. It doesn't happen, right? Keep that in mind. And then also, Faye made another point earlier, get rid of the old school. That old school thought process needs to go. As an example, I'll say, for those businesses that still say, oh, cash is important, fine. That's your prerogative. However, I will say cash is not cheaper. There is a very good study that Payments Canada did a few years ago, and they keep repeating it. Cash is actually more expensive than most card payments to take, simply because you have to account for the amount of time it takes you to count it, the amount of time it takes you to go to the bank, the employee resourcing it takes you to do that, the potential theft, the potential loss, all of that is in place. So what you thought was normal, like that old school, from the 80s, from the 90s, this worked. Let's keep it going. It's not going to work in this new world of inflation, of digitization. My God, that's a hard word to say. Of people just wanting speed. Speed is so important, right? If you make someone wait more than, if that little buffering arrow comes up or circle comes up, you're done. Cart abandonment, which is Amazon puts its cart abandonment rate, by the way, at 80%. Amazon. So imagine what you as a small business, if there's even a little bit of friction, will do. So make sure you take that away. Okay. Lisa had the same reaction I did when I saw that stat, which is like, really? I have not abandoned my cart to Amazon, so clearly I'm not for that stat. Anyway, so plain and simply put, just make sure that friction goes away, and that's how you'll succeed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Eric, how about your thoughts?
Lots of thoughts, but I will narrow it down to two because lots of great advice given already. Number one, dream big. Like, the future is bright, and especially if you're an owner, manager, you want to have a longer term outlook. Investing in technology is a great way to sort of future proof, obviously. But number two, along with technology, investing in knowledge and people, in my personal opinion, might be a little controversial, but consistently probably the highest ROI thing to do. Investing in people and knowledge on technology. So, not if you're a solo entrepreneur, investing in yourself on, hey, let's figure out what are some good tools, or investing in your team. Hey, like we have this one tool, how do we use it to its 100% capacity and potential? So lots of room on the human capital side as well.
Okay, perfect. And Tessa, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm honored to go after all you guys. You gave me so much to work with, so many good ideas there. Yeah, absolutely agree with Eric. Dream big, and yeah, it can be hard sometimes for SMEs to imagine dreaming of future proofing because maybe it's like something that the big companies do, but software is a really great way for small businesses to access the same resources as bigger enterprises, but for a fraction of the cost. There are so many tools available these days. You can find the right tool for your needs without being forced to subscribe to expensive products with irrelevant or complicated features. Just keep your software solutions simple, cater them to your needs so as not to overwhelm your employees or your budget, and still create that agility, where your business needs it most, that agility that's going to help your business meet your customers where they are, like Schnella has said. And then the key to that, to make sure you pick the right tools, is to evaluate your SME's digital transformation plan, make sure your solutions integrate with each other and are protected by cybersecure practices, and continuously measure and check on that efficiency and the functionality of your software. And if you just follow these, this will help you make you both proactive and reactive when it comes to the decisions that you make with your digital transformation.
Wonderful, wonderful. And if I may sort of, I guess in the summary, if we could kind of use one aspect of really what is all about, what is at the core of sustainable business models, is really just, it's really serving your customer in the right way. It's focusing on what they need, focusing on how they buy, when they buy, what they buy, and really sort of following their journey as a definition of where sort of you need to be as a business. So, well, this was great. Thank you so much. I learned a lot. I wrote a lot of notes. This was fantastic. Really, really enjoyed all of your feedback, varied experiences from various industries, and listen, your example from Cisco and also a small business perspective. So this was fantastic. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And I hope, I'm assuming that all the viewers have definitely taken a lot away from this session.
Thank you so much, Mickey. No, there were some really interesting points made that I believe that our audience could benefit from. Thank you for the brief overview of what's happening in digital transformation, as these trends will likely affect how businesses operate going forward. And as Shanella mentioned, the future is now, or rather it will be soon. But thanks to you amazing key takeaway presenters who helped us understand the current trends in the digital transformation, which are sure to disrupt business as usual for years and decades ahead alike. And honestly, I can't personally wait until next time when we meet again for the in-person event with even more insights on how these changes might affect business practices going forward. So thank you all for joining in today.